Welcome to the Boardroom Sessions podcast. In these sessions, we meet the most amazing and interesting people. We learn about their passions, their business models, cool new technologies, and of course, their lessons on personal growth. I hope you enjoy. In this Boardroom Sessions podcast, we meet Duane Forrester, search expert currently with Yext and has had experience at Microsoft. We search every day, but do you really know how it works? We dive right in. Hope you enjoy. Duane Forrester, welcome to the Boardroom Sessions podcast.
Mike, thank you very much for having me, man.
Super excited to have you here, and we're going to get a schooling here from an expert on search. And so, Duane, you're an author. You wrote a couple books, how to make money with your blog, how to turn clicks into customers. You've got 20 plus years of search and social. 9 of that was with Microsoft and Bing in particular. Yep. So you lived in it. And currently you're working for a company that you and I've been introduced with called Yext. And I'll let you give us a little rundown on what you're doing over at Yext. But in general, I was hoping you might be able to take your experience and help share with the podcast audience here, the world of search. Everybody searches every day. We're going into our Google toolbar or our Bing toolbar or our Yahoo toolbar and putting in a search, and we have very little understanding as to why those first 4 or 5, other than paid advertisements, and even how those are searched and delivered to us. And then even if we go to the second page, what's on the second page? I don't think that maybe a 0.0% of the time do I even make it to the second page. So lot to talk about there and looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting session. I will commit this. If I know it, I will share it. I will tell secrets. I will tell truths. I will hold back on the lies and do my very best to help everyone understand the complexity of this.
Good. That's great. First of all, why don't you tell us about Yext?
Yeah.
Why don't you tell the folks, describe to Yext what you do?
So Yext is we're a platform. It's a software company. Basically, the way you need to be thinking about this is if somebody's asking a question about your business, you're probably in the best position to answer about that business. You are the source of knowledge, the source of truth for your own business. Our job is to help get that data into Google, into Bing, into Facebook, into all of these areas. And we've been doing that for well over a decade now. It started with local listings and obviously has grown from there. And, one of the things that Mike, you and I have been engaged in recently is conversations around AI-powered site search and these kinds of advancements. Which is a really fancy way, after we strip out all of the buzzwords there, it's a really fancy way of telling someone that we can give you a Google-like search experience within your own website. So instead of somebody coming to your website, not seeing the answer they want immediately, and then bouncing back to Google and then continuing to click on other things, which are not you because Google knows you didn't answer that question, you can capture them and keep them on your website and keep them engaged with you. And then you've got a greater chance, get them in your sales funnel, lead to a conversion, whatever that might be on your.
And the important thing I've found through our conversations with clients that you do for them, the service that you do for them, is they don't have to recreate the wheel. The information that they already have, you're just making it presentable, searchable, using AI to find that, and then put that in a user interface that presents to the client without them having to go make new websites and do things like that.
And this is really the fascinating part of it. This is part of why I'm so excited to be at the company. I've been here about 4.5 years now, and it's been amazing to go from a company like Microsoft to a pre-IPO startup like Yext, and then go through the IPO and watch the growth of this platform, this technology, because it's difficult enough running a business today. And so if I show up and I say, if you just do a little more work and pay me, then you can get the benefits of this, which is really a traditional approach. It's kind of where we have been until today's state of the art has shown up, where now we show up and we say things like, you already have all that data. Great, give it to us. We'll create the knowledge graph for you. Oh, you have all of that on your website, but what you don't have is the time to go get it and collate that information? Not a problem. We have a crawler that will go and do that and build this knowledge graph. And that's 2 instances of knowledge graph. I've said we're going to dive into it some more. I'm going to explain what it is and tell you guys why it's so important to a business. Because ultimately, take my company out of this equation, look strictly at Google, look strictly at Bing. The search programs that they operate today are built around the core of what's called the knowledge graph.
Okay.
It is a very specific item that all entities are held within. So, Mike, you're an entity. Where you went to school is an entity. The jobs you've had are attributes of that entity. The school itself is an entity, and then it has attributes. And so you start to see how all of these discrete pieces, name, address, phone number, products, measurements of products, availability of products, you start to see how this knowledge graph becomes a group of many things. And the whole point behind having the AI or the machine learning is to discover the relationships between them. Because somebody might be really curious about Mike Miller, and why they're curious is because they want to know what kind of support he offers his alumni. And that matters to them because that tells them who Mike is. And that helps them decide if they want to engage with Mike. So by drawing the relationship between Mike, where he went to school, and what he does for that school today, you suddenly complete the picture of Mike's my guy. I want to attach to Mike. I want to do business with Mike. Previously, if you looked at things in a more linear fashion, and this is the way the original search world existed, it was just keyword lookup. So it was how close to Mike can I get? Well, I can get Mike, I can get Mikey, I can get Michael, I can get Miguel, I can get all of these synonyms, and that gets me close to Mike. But if we want to talk about Mike, the Harvard grad, who's known on their alumni board, who supports them with mentoring, that's a very specific Mike. And it's machine learning that will discover those things and then be able to say to a marketer, this is a marketable moment. You want to talk about this. So it's massively powerful. It's how Google and Bing understand the relationship of things in our world. So they're very good at understanding, like, if I like to travel, they see that, they know that. They know what a good travel deal looks like. I have a conversation with somebody saying, I want to go to Machu Picchu someday, and suddenly there's a great package deal there. The next time I do a search about travel, Google may take that package deal and showcase it as a search result for me, right, because it's personalized and it knows all of this about me.
Okay.
And it doesn't do that without understanding a knowledge graph. So think of the knowledge graph as one thing, but many things.
Okay.
And again, we'll explore that in a little more detail.
Okay.
Because everything revolves around personalization as well. So there's a knowledge graph about Mike. There's a knowledge graph about Duane. There's a knowledge graph about my company. There's a knowledge graph about my industry within which my company would sit. Okay. There's a knowledge graph about the broader application of industries on the internet, of which my company is a downstream portion of. And all of these pieces come together at Google's end. Maybe I want to say it was like 2014. I might be getting my date wrong, but it was a while ago. Google made a statement saying that they wanted to index the world. And that's a really bold statement. You think, okay, it's Google. They can say whatever they want. Who's going to question them? And really, what the hell does that even mean? Why would I care? When Google said they want to index the world, they literally meant they want to understand everything in existence on this planet. Not the ephemeral world that we think of in our minds. No, the physical world. And all of that leads them to a deeper understanding of intent, which is where we live in our own heads about what's motivating us. Well, they can't get to that, but they can get to a guy wearing a backpack with a camera on it, hiking Machu Picchu, doing a street view of Machu Picchu, so that I can go and visit that as a consumer and get really excited about wanting to go do that hike myself in person. And then when I'm at that peak excitement and engagement, because they know I've watched that video 7 times on YouTube or gone there a bunch of times on Street View, suddenly that deal is available and it's in front of me.
So they want that because they can sell that to somebody who is offering that service,
Well,
not
let's
out
be
of the
clear.
altruism of being able to be a good
It is
provider.
google.com, not google.org.
That's
so
correct.
Let's be clear,
Yes.
right? Like they are a public company. They have a vested interest in profitability and revenue. And let's not lose sight of this. All public companies have a legal requirement to generate a return for their investors.
Yes.
So like,
yeah,
you
they're
can't
not
separate.
evil for creating profit. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that if they're going to be presenting you travel deals on your Machu Picchu trip, to your example, then there is revenue for them to do it, and there's even a business reason for sending the guy with the backpack and the head cam up to take the first video, because then they're going to market it to you. So
if you want to bring in altruism on this, right, there is an element of that, okay, because at some point during this whole conversation, someone had to decide whether the chicken or the egg came first, because that person going to Machu Picchu with that piece of equipment on their back didn't happen for free. So someone had to be paid. That person is an employee. They have benefits. The equipment itself, the backpack, not kidding here, $100,000 worth of equipment in that thing. The fact that they have a level of fitness that allows them to hike with 46 pounds on their back up Machu Picchu. Now you're narrowing this to select human beings, which aren't going to come cheaply. And there's a lot that goes into this before there's a return on that investment. But if you think about this, in 2012, Google started moving toward using a knowledge graph. And the manifest of that to the average person using Google is when you search for something, a celebrity, for example, on the right-hand side of the screen, you get that great window that pops up saying, here's everything we know about that celebrity. Here's where they were born. Here's who they're married to. Here's their kids. Here's their net worth. Here's how tall they are. Oddly enough, I found one last night. Here's how much they weigh. I'm like, I don't know where you got that data point, but okay.
Yeah, if the data's there, you got to create a plan for it, right?
And so, but all of that then answered my question, because my question was, hand in the air, we were watching The Voice last night, and Brandy was one of the celebrity judges on there, and one of the mentors. And I'm thinking, I remember her from when I was young. Man, she must be getting older now. And that actually made me feel pretty good, right? Because I'm like, a contemporary, I'm not that old. She looks great. And I go look it up. Turns out she's 41 and weighs 118 pounds. And I expected to see her age. I had no idea about the weight. And frankly, it has no bearing. But it did make me think for a moment, like, there's a lot of information out there. So at some point, Google came across that and feels confident that that information is an accurate reflection of this human being, confident enough to give it to me in the answer. It's a part of Google's knowledge graph on that celebrity.
Okay.
And so then I see all of that. Now, what I want is everyone listening, I want you to think your business is that celebrity. So what information does Google know about you? What should they know about you? And much as it pains us all to dive into this, what do they know about you that you wish was different?
Right. So that's the question of all celebrities, right? So you're begging the question right now of, if I'm this celebrity that you were searching yesterday, would I have the ability to not present my weight? Right. That may be not a flattering number that I want thrown out there. Right.
Totally in the business.
I might be Kevin Hart, right, and be this awesome guy for 98% of my time, but I have 2% of my time I was a jerk, and people are pushing that information out there. And so,
well, but that's the scintillation, right? That's what sells the paper, is that 2% of jerk. And it doesn't matter how nice a guy you are. You know, it turns out the world wants to know about the bad, which is why you're a business and you get negative reviews. And it has such a big impact on you individually as the business owner or the manager who's responsible for the reputation management. You take that personally because you know that negative resonates with people today, and you just wish it wasn't happening. And, you know, there's a way to diffuse that too, right? Like literally jump on every grenade. And when you do that, a couple of things happen. First off, and we're gonna go on a bit of a tangent here, Mike.
That's okay.
We're gonna veer off slightly into the parking lot of reputation management.
Sure, which is important because we're working with companies like Sprinkler and others with our clients that are helping the social media and being able to respond to negative and positive sentiment.
So this is really important. Okay. So I'm gonna kind of bifurcate this, right? I'm gonna divide this into two for us. Okay. So there's the social media side, which is, I liken it to PR. This is where you have to have reactive statements or proactive statements for things. Everything that's going on with Asian Americans and the hate crimes that are happening and the instances of negativity right now today. Companies need to be aware of that and have proactive statements ready to be engaged. Because if their customers engage them on this topic, silence isn't an option today. You have to have something prepared. And so then from a social media perspective, you've got to have your messaging down. You have to make sure the messaging is accurate and on point. You have to be flexible to be able to update it. You have to understand what the issues are, why they are issues, how they affect your customers, your employees, your shareholders, your communities that you're in, and where you stand in relation to all of that. So there's that side of the reputation management aspect, which, let's be clear, is no small thing. You can get a degree in PR management. It's that big of a focus.
Yes.
Now there's the other side, which is everybody has a voice, because anybody can go on Yelp and leave a review. Mm-hmm. Anybody can go to Google and leave a review. You have to deal with all of that, and it's soul crushing.
Yes.
Because generally what you don't get is, I'm one of those random guys who, like, if I have a problem, I had a problem with a local company here. They're a national brand, but I deal with my local shop. And I had a problem with them because I couldn't find information I was looking for on the website. I called up the shop. They were a bit short on the phone. They didn't know the answer. They didn't care. They just wanted me to spend the $2,000, buy the product, and take my chances. And I'm like, no, damn it. There has to, get me the answer to this question. It's a technical thing. It's simple. It's a measurement.
Yeah.
You should already have this. So I ended up going around the long way, made a connection on LinkedIn. Now we're having a meeting this week to talk to the senior digital marketing manager of the holding company that owns that brand. So I can talk to them about the failure and talk to them about how you solve for X.
That's a long way around. You could have what I call app blasted them, right? Where you went on Twitter and said, at that company, I've had a terrible experience, and sat by your phone waiting for the next call to come in.
And Mike, I've got 35,000 followers on social media. I could absolutely do that. And let me tell you, I know Delta Airlines has me on a short list.
Yes.
Because I do that with them when they fail me in my travel, when I used to fly. But the fact here is, the medium path, the path of least resistance for consumers, is to just leave a negative review. I got an email from Google last night telling me that one of my reviews from 2019 March has been liked over 20 times by people in my local community. It was a 1-star review ripping a salon who required my wife to come in person at the height of the pandemic to put her account on hold with them. And I'm like, no, that's not realistic. They simply want to make you uncomfortable, hoping you will just keep paying them. And there's a health crisis in effect here. This is wrong. So they earned their 1-star review from me, I feel. But the problem now for them is, they've never reached out to me. They've never commented on it. They've never touched it. And over 24 people now have given a thumbs up saying they appreciated that sentiment.
Well, I've had the service of being able and the pleasure of being able to pull up for many of my clients that spend millions of dollars on their brand reputation, right? Mm-hmm. And pulled up reviews from various places with bots, right, that have gone and trolled the internet and brought them all back to them and showed them to them in a very first appointment with a provider. Right. Yep. And they're awestruck. They haven't seen them. They have no idea that these are out there. They cost a whole lot of money. As you described in your situation with your local salon, you had 20 people that jumped in on the same vote. Right. So there's more than one person out there that feel that way, and you need to take care of those. And there's such an easy way of handling that in today's environment.
100%. And look, I've seen data that actually tells businesses this very clearly. You need to respond to 75 to 80% of all your reviews. Positive, negative, doesn't matter. Just touch them. Let people know that you have been seen. When that happens, you will see a star increase of a third to a half a star rating. Now, you might not think that's a big deal, okay? But if you're at a 3.8 and Google is asked, best nail salon near me, you will not make the cut if you're below 4 stars, because there is a filter for best. And it means
that's
you have
4-star average. Average, you mean?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So if your average is sitting at 3.8 and I ask for best, you'll never be shown to me. But if you're out there responding to these things, even the positive ones saying, hey, thanks, we appreciate you, something simple as that,
okay.
Or the negative ones saying, look, we're really sorry you had a bad experience. We're working to improve. Please bear with us. Even something as throwaway as that, you can claim a third to a half a star. And now suddenly you're at a 4.1 to a 4.2. And when I ask for best, you're in my mix. That has a material effect on how people are finding you on their mobile phones today, and where you're showing up on that map pack, and directly on the foot traffic coming to you. Plus, it also has a psychological effect on the expectation the person shows up with. Now, they may be going to you because a friend recommended you and they see that you've got a 3.9 stars, so they're not entirely thrilled because they know there's other salons that have higher ratings.
Yes, no doubt. So
and then they're looking for the fails.
So star reviews and ratings are one of the few areas in this world that we're talking about today that is cross-generational, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
People are used to the Consumer Reports on the older end of the spectrum, right? And so they're happily looking at reviews of products. The youth, my kids, my 30-year-old kid, and I wouldn't call him a kid to most people, but my 30-year-old is the first generation of millennial, and he's a Yelp guy, right? He will pick his restaurants, buy Yelp reviews, and buy his friends' reviews on Yelp that are there, and so he picks those.
Here's a couple of really fascinating points on this, okay, Mike? I'm going to put you and I in the same category on this, all right? When you and I want reviews or we want recommendations, we will ask our close friends and our family and get their feedback, and we value that in decision making. Your kids, they're okay having your feedback, but they don't need your feedback to make the decision. Their kids actually don't want their feedback and only want the anonymous feedback of a mass of people. That's how the trend is going in terms of reviews and decision making.
Interesting.
So you don't even have the luxury of touching one person, the matriarch or the patriarch of a family, and having their influence over their generations of kids. That world no longer exists. The world we're living in today is we have Gen Z who is already collecting their first paychecks, making purchase decisions based solely on the reviews they see online, with no one else's input other than random strangers.
Right. And those can be manipulated too, right? And I'm assuming they're manipulated when I look at reviews and I see the first 5 that pop up, right? Those aren't like generated the most friendly reviews you can get of the product.
Look, there's a reason why Amazon shows you, quote, most relevant reviews first, right?
And you air quotes, by the way, there.
Yeah, it's a euphemism for crap we know will sell you on the product.
Yes.
Every time you want to make a purchase on Amazon, and generally I don't do this for smaller stuff, but for bigger stuff, I go in and I go to the reviews and I sort them by recent and I read at least 10 to 20 of them. You'll know very quickly what's an actual review from a person versus what's been.
I also go to the 1 and 2 star reviews just right out of the gate to find out what the negative. If I hear the same negative thing, like I bought a home printer the other day, right?
Yep.
If you want to get mired in a quagmire of decision making, there's a bazillion different options there.
Yeah.
And so I looked at the same one, and it was a complaint about the 1 star reviews all came from like the feeder tray, right?
Right.
I put that as a low issue for me. And so if that's their main issue, I can live with that.
Fine.
Right.
100% agree. I do the same thing. Or I'm looking to see if the person's reasonable. Because look, if you can't string together a full sentence, if your grammar is bad, if it's clear you missed something obvious, I'm not going to give your review as much credence as if it was a fully formed thought. Now, like you, I would look at this and say, well, if your complaint is that the feeder tray doesn't hold enough paper and the specifications tell me it holds almost a full ream of paper, your complaint doesn't matter to me because I don't print that much that's an issue.
Right.
And I'm willing to accept that if I am printing that much and that does become an issue, I'm going to have to live with refilling my printer. Like
as an expert, how do you tell What are the big indicators for you that it's an auto-generated or maybe a consumer-friendly, a product-friendly?
So the big ones for me are their lack of context, their lack of detail. It's a total support statement with no information. I love this. Would buy again. And I'm like, okay, I don't like, none of this is helping me make the decision about, and I'm looking at my printer as we're having this conversation, thinking back to being in that quagmire, ruining the day when I know I'll be back in it again. None of this helps me understand how reliable is it on Wi-Fi when I'm trying to print.
But could that, using the printer analogy, could that printer company utilize tactics to get good reviews? They could offer
100%.
So walk us through some of those.
Let's dial that back, Mike. Because when you say that, here's what I think. That I think when you say that, what comes into my head is that there was a concerted plan, an actual marketing plan around developing positive reviews. And somewhere along the way, that was either third-partied out or given to a person who now has a volume problem because they're tasked with building 1,000 reviews a month. And how do I do that? I can't write 1,000 paragraphs and I can't just copy and paste the same one 10 times. But there's not nearly that much thought put into it, right? What ends up happening is you have someone who says, we have a reputation problem, our stars are low. And then you go out and you hire a company whose job is to help you boost that. And then you take their direction, which is, we have a program, we'll go out and we'll do all this. Sounds great, take my money. And then they go out and they do this, which means they hire another third party to go and do this. And because everything is blind from everything else, you don't ever actually see the review. And in a lot of instances, you may be told, look, it's better that you don't know what these things are, because if you're seen to be going and checking up on all this, it looks like a footprint. So don't go near that, and no one can associate you with it. And I've seen that level of subterfuge applied and get big brands into problems. 99% of it just gets ignored by Google. They're just like, we know it's crap, we ignore it. And really, I'm gonna drop a keyword in here that's going to kind of give us an exit into another world here, Mike, because I don't want to rat hole too much on this one thing, right? I don't want people to panic about it. But usefulness, that's what Google is looking for. And something like Love It is not really a good review, okay? When I sit down, though, and say, I've had 3 printers in the last year, and this printer has been most reliable on my home Wi-Fi network. The feed tray has been reliable. I've never run out of paper on a frequency level that is problematic for me. I don't print a lot, but it's good. It's a bit of a pig on gas when it comes to ink, but the ink is cheap, and you can buy it directly, or you can have the things refilled. Now, this is a review that's useful, and that Google will look at and say, hey, that's valuable. We want to know about that.
So Google's looking for detail and information specific to the review, and it knows the difference between general and a specific.
100%. Google knows the difference between fat and fat, F-A-T and P-H-A-T. It gets the connotation. And then one is a sentiment expressed of excitement and it's excellent. And the other may be describing a food product or maybe used in a derogatory manner toward a person. But it's generally not a positive moment. It skews more across the internet. And this is really critical for businesses to understand. When Google understands something, it has the ability to look across the entirety of the internet, not just your website and a few other websites, the entirety of the internet at any given time. So it will understand with a greater degree of accuracy the sentiment on a topic than you could ever hope to understand.
Sure. So let's remind people in general, when we're talking search here, you're talking Google. There's no way around this conversation. 92% of all search, I looked it up before this podcast.
Yep.
92% of all search is done on Google today.
Yes.
The next best,
not a monopoly. Just to be clear.
Nope. But the next is Bing at 2.5%, Yahoo at 1.5%, Baidu with Chinese is 1.3%, and everybody else is sub 1%. So we're talking about micro percentages.
Those are global numbers, right? So I know they are because I know the numbers. Those are global representation of all search around the world. And there are countries where Google is the only search provider. So, of course, that skews their global percentage. In North America, the numbers are more balanced, but let me toss them at you and you'll see why I'm going to air quote balance on that, okay? Because when you have roughly 66% of the market, that's not balanced. So if you're not focused on what Google wants, it is a problem for you. And I don't care if you want to look at that on a US basis, where Bing is almost 30% market share. And yeah, that's great. But the fact is, Bing doesn't send as much traffic to the average website as Google does. So if you're not focused in the area that Google is focused in, which incidentally, sidebar here, is also the same area of focus that Bing has. So when you focus on improving for Google, you also improve for Bing. It's not like you need to split this or do two things or make a choice. You do it once, it's good for everybody. Bottom line here is, let's just take Google and Bing. You're going to improve for them 90+% market share of search in the United States. In North America, similar percentage. And then you get out to the global numbers, which skews heavily toward Google, or in some markets, as you're pointing out, China, not Google, Baidu.
Right.
Russia, not Google, Yandex. So you've got different players in play there. Now, let's face it, I think most of the folks that'll be listening to our show here focus more in the US as opposed to international markets. But the fact here is you need to understand clearly what the engines are focused on. And the engines are focused on user experience. That's what Google is focused very, very tightly around. They put a white paper out last summer called The Messy Middle. And that white paper talks about the customer journey. And I know when I say customer journey, marketing people are like, we're over that. We don't care. It's all been done to death, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, guess what? If you're over it, that means you gave up on it and you never solved it. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to challenge everybody listening. This has to be a top priority for you because there's a thing called Core Web Vitals. And Mike, I think you and I have talked about this just briefly. It's very technical. It's very down in the weeds, technical SEO stuff. But I encourage folks, talk to your teams or go look up Core Web Vitals yourself. The reason this technical work is so critical is because Google is using the signals, the empirical signals that is using from those Core Web Vital tests to determine the ranking of websites moving forward. This turns on in May for mobile. So this will have an effect on businesses and how people see them. And since most people start their internet session on a mobile device today, you have to be mobile first.
And that's important for most people to think. And a lot of people don't remember that. And especially when people are trying to interact with people, human beings on the other end, we're used to the phone as a voice tool, right? Mm-hmm. And the computer as the access into digital, right? And that's not the case if you think about yourself as a consumer. And definitely when we're talking about the millennials and the Gen Z, did you call them?
Millennials, Gen Z, and then what comes after Gen Z is Gen Alpha, because apparently we've run out of alphabet, so we start over again.
They're 100% mobile.
100%. Millennials were the first all digital generation. Okay. And, I'm Gen X. So I remember a time before the internet and frankly have no understanding what I was doing with my time. Like legitimately, I feel like I was just wasting my childhood because then I discovered the internet and the world happened, Yes. But this is the way it is today. And I'll challenge folks, like if you're thinking it's not mobile first, you have to ask yourself, are you aligned with what today's expectations are from a consumer? I would humbly suggest you are misaligned, but there are slices and it depends on a niche. It depends on what you do. I talked to a client of ours one day. They sell trailers for 18-wheelers. So the big rig trailers that you see, that's what they sell. That's their product. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine it's an expensive product. It's a longer sales cycle. And it's not like people just buy them sight unseen. Like there's a proximity to this. Like you don't just buy one, and then what do you do with it? No, you have to legitimately be in the market and have a big rig so that you can do something with it. Like there's a very, very different cut in some verticals, but don't make the assumption that your vertical is cut differently. Okay, let's take a quick look at the pandemic as an example of this. All right. I'm willing to bet if anybody listening to this, if I asked you to raise your hand, you now have things dropped on your doorstep more frequently from a local business than you ever have in the history of your life. Raise your hand.
Without doubt.
100%. Everybody's hand is going up. Groceries, packaged goods, anything. Everyone turned to that. That doesn't go away. So this whole notion of static in a vertical or an industry doesn't exist now. It took but one pandemic to change expectations. And incidentally, those expectations were changed with my generation, but the millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha, they were already aligned with those expectations. They already were in that direction.
Sure.
And what was needed was for me to age out for those things to come to full maturity, or, as happens, a global pandemic to stop us from leaving our homes, except for the brave few who would go fetch for us and put on our doorstep. And now suddenly we all understand the value of this. And this all comes back again to intent and usefulness, which is what Google's focused on, because Google knows if they can understand the intent behind whatever question you ask it. You need a new refrigerator, or you're researching about energy efficient refrigerators. Does that mean you need a new refrigerator? If the answer to that question is yes, I need a new refrigerator, and that's what started my actual work through this, then Google's in a position to give you the right answer. That answer may be proximity based because Lowe's or Home Depot have a good fridge that is energy efficient and it's available right now for you. Or it may be a situation where Google understands that you are a high-end shopper. And so instead of sending you to that result, they're going to bring you to the sub-zero result, because they also know that part of your reason for researching the refrigerator is because they understand you are building a second home somewhere. You're in the construction phase. And so your intent for looking up energy efficiency for a refrigerator is different in the second example than it is in the first one. My fridge is broken. I need a replacement because I don't want my milk to go bad. I don't want to throw up my food. The other one, you've got time. You've got months before you make your decision. And so the answers to those things are very different. We're at that stage of search where Google is trying to solve for that.
Yes. Right now it looks creepy a bit. It looks like they heard a conversation.
Yeah.
I've heard many anecdotal information where people have said, I was on a walk with the dogs and another person, and we talked about the dog scratching, and I came and opened up my browser and it sent me a cookie with an ad for some dog medicine.
Yeah. So that's actually real. There's if you have like Google, I think it's the Chromecast, the TV plugin from Google. And I believe Amazon does the same thing. I've got Amazon here at the house, and I think they all work in a similar way. I've got smart speakers set up. They use ultrasonics. We as humans can't hear this, but they use ultrasonics to communicate between the devices. And that data going back and forth helps inform the information that answers a question when you ask it out loud, or the information that they might actually give to you. So we like to use the word creepy because we all kind of think it's fun to say it and make people cringe.
But people really like it. It's helping their lives.
Here's the fact of the matter, okay? We never get to the world of Star Trek where everyone has enough and the world serves our needs unless we have this layer. This is a fundamental layer of making technology work for humans. And it's only creepy to those of us who get the connotation of creepy. Again, you talk to Gen Z and you talk to Alpha.
It's about consumer care, right? For them, my kids,
they don't understand what our hang up is.
Right? Give me the information, make it better buying experience.
Just want the answer.
They know
Just
what
want
it is.
The answer.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, one of the big indicators there is, and I'm not a huge social guy, but I do dabble on a few platforms, and Instagram advertising is spot on. It knows me. It knows what I do, how I play, what I do for fun, and the ads come to me right in my wheelhouse. They're like, I used to think there's the most amazing consumer place in the world
Right. Yeah.
on Instagram. And my friends
Yeah.
would tell me, oh, it's the same for me too. And so whatever's going on there is working. But
So
I'm in the category, though, I will say on the last note to say, if Google and Alexa are listening to me in my house, I've unplugged them as much as I can. Right. And so Siri still hears me, I'm sure, but I find it creepy to have them listening and then putting advertisements toward that.
It's always a personal choice, right?
Yes.
And the companies respect that
Yeah.
because you can play partly in the Google or Amazon environment, but not totally. They don't require that you have this thing in and plugged in. However, if you want to order by just talking to Amazon, you have to have it plugged in. You have to engage with it.
So I just want to make sure the audience heard you. That actually happens. You're the first person I've heard that's actually said this is going on.
No. So listen, guys, look, have you seen the movie on Netflix called The Social Dilemma?
Yes.
Right. So everyone needs to go watch this, okay? Because look, it's a dramatization. Let's be clear, right? But the fundamentals of what they're talking about are very true. Okay?
About how to keep people engaged, how they work on manipulation, dopamine.
It's all about the response to you. Like, I'm not going to lie, all right? My Apple Watch. So I did this math over the weekend. In the last year, I walked a little over 1,100 miles. And I was kind of stunned by this, right? Because I crept up on it one day at a time. I didn't think anything of it. It just my wife and I would get up. We'd do a lap around our neighborhood, which is a mile. And we would do that with the dogs. Then we drop the dogs at the house and we do 2 more laps for ourselves for exercise. Just a great way to start the day. I live in Southern California. I got a great tan, although, the audience won't see it, but there's a tan line on my arm, right? Mike sees it.
Farmer tan.
Yeah. And this is just my normal day. Okay. And it's an investment in myself and my health. Well, lo and behold, 365 days later, when you do the math, you're 1,100 miles into a journey that is shocking to you. And the reason that I'm at 1,100 miles is because every day,
gamification,
over 365 days, I have a move ring that's telling me longest streak, and there's your number. And I will be damned if I am going to break that number.
That's right.
That is totally a gamification that is happening in my mind, led by Apple.
Yes.
To get me to do something that admittedly is in my own best interest.
Sure.
And it works for me.
That's a positive example of gamification tool.
Totally.
Wearables are working. It's going to change a lot of things in the way people do medicine as well. I think the gamification of wearables, and the ability are going to help people with blood disorders and insulin and all kinds of things with diabetes.
I tell you, I am waiting with bated breath for the next Apple Watch to come out this year, because it's going to have a blood glucose monitor.
Yes.
And I want that.
Yes. So there's a lot of positive benefits there from gamification. If we could take a step back here and let's just go back to the fact that 90% of search is done on Google and Bing.
Yeah.
You spent plenty of time in that game. For a consumer, for us, what do we need to know other than we're being manipulated, right? I mean, what would you leave us with as far as the big thoughts here on search?
For the consumer, it's all about how important is getting the answer to you and how much or little are you willing to work for it. And generally speaking, consumers aren't really willing to work for it, right? If you look at Google, if you look at it in the time you and I grew up watching search grow, you would see that singular keywords occupy the lion's share of the time for the focus of search marketers. So every company would have somebody in there who's responsible for SEO, search engine optimization, and they were focused on keywords and ranking. And they're focused on the head because that's where all the traffic is. Problem with this is, over time, we have new vectors, new ways to get answers to questions, new ways to ask questions. And now we're seeing a great amount of growth in the long tail. So fully formed sentences, which only have a very discrete answer, but may only be asked once a month, not 10,000 times a month. Those lead to greater conversions. So from the consumer side, what we're seeing is we're seeing more informed questions being asked, not because people are taking their time to type it in, but because they're talking to devices.
Yes.
An older generation doesn't want the small keyboard. They'll hit the microphone, they'll say it out loud, and we all know how we're trained to speak. Mm-hmm. We speak in full sentences. We don't speak in keyword phrases. And younger generations, It's about the efficiency. So they're just hitting that, saying what they want, and they have an expectation of an instant answer. That's a learned behavior as a child. Now, my wife and I were walking today, and we were talking about learned behaviors as children, right? Things like not getting in an adult's way, lest your parents find out about it and end you. Because that's the way it was when I was a kid. If anything bad got back to my parents that I did in our community, that was the end of Duane right there. I knew that as a kid, and that formed who I am today. I don't cut people off when I'm walking. I'm careful when I'm driving. I try to be thoughtful when I'm out in my community. I don't make noise in my backyard, like all of these different things. And so the behaviors these kids are learning right now, instantaneous answers, that expectation will never go away. And as a business, you need to be able to match that. You have to be able to give them that answer, because if it's not you, it'll be someone else. And that's Google's job. Google's job is not to support you. It's to support Google, which means if there are a million other answers to that and any one of them is better than you, that's the number one. Right. It doesn't matter how much you know you're accurate.
Google supports Google, but it also supports their paid advertisers, right?
Yes, but that's a different scenario, right? Paid and organic are separate. They don't have an overlap. Doesn't matter how much you pay to Google. It doesn't get you any points in organic or in ranking or anything like that.
That's a very, very good point I want to reiterate again. So let's review that again. Organic search on something is not mixed with paid. So
no. Now, to be clear, the results we see are a mashup. Ads up top, because when people click on them, Google actually makes money on that.
At least they say ad today. At least we know what an ad is.
At least right now, we know it's an ad. And to be clear, there are some early studies starting to show that younger generations are placing more trust in paid ads, which means as their trust in a paid advertisement grows because the brand becomes known to them through social media engagement, through reputation management, they're willing to engage with the paid ad. So they'll never get to the organic, which obviously would greatly benefit a search engine, because they don't get paid when somebody clicks on an organic ranking. They get paid when they click on there, right? So we kind of see an end game here 10 years from now. We can see where it grows. But during all of this, those areas are separated. In fact, I've had companies come to me and say, when I was at Bing, they were like, do you have any idea how many millions of dollars we spend on Bing advertising? And I'm like, no, I have no idea. It's a separate division. They're in a separate city. I don't talk to them.
Yeah.
Well, we spend $10 million a year with you guys. You need to get on the phone and tell me how to rank better. No, I don't. What I need to do is go talk to my core engineering team in search and understand the value you add in the equations where you're a part of the conversation. And if they tell me there's a problem that they think you need to solve, then I engage with you and help you figure it out, because that's for the greater good of all searchers.
And this comes back to the conversations we've had around a knowledge graph and reputation management, and core web vitals.
Absolutely. There's no buying your way forward in organic search. It's simply non-existent. If people think it's a myth, if you could do that, Google would have been shut down a long time ago, because that violates a bunch of different policies for large companies.
Okay.
Like, it's just not realistic.
I'm liking what you're breaking down for us. So, as individuals, we need to know that the search engines are looking for the best possible experience. So they're not just grabbing at straws. Obviously, they're not easily manipulated, because they're gathering more and more information to make it more and more pertinent, to make a better connection organically. This is without paid, and then. 3, they're even giving us a whole lot more information today with peer input, i.e. reviews and rankings and things like that are coming from the outside world.
Mike, they're going even beyond that, right? When I built and launched Webmaster Tools at Bing years ago, part of what we released was the Webmaster Tools guidelines, which specifically laid out work items that businesses should do to rank well organically. So me, an SEO, running that program, wrote that and got approval from the search engine to share it publicly. Mm-hmm. And it's out there. And now that sounds, wow, that's amazing, right? That's actually my story to tell, but it's not unique, because Google had a version of that out before I released that. So there are webmaster guidelines from Google, which help businesses understand what to focus on. And it's really tempting for a business to look at this and say, big brother telling me what to do. Watch my left hand. Don't worry about what the right hand is doing. No, 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 no. It is in their best interest for you to build a better experience. And when you build that better experience, they'll rank it ahead of someone because they're not loyal to who's there. And you could displace them, and then you're getting all that traffic.
I'm glad we're having this conversation because it's coming into this conversation. I thought it was going to be a little bit more big brother and this is how you have to manipulate and this is how we are being manipulated. And more important, I'm leaving this conversation with is that it's actually in the best interest to have the most authentic experience possible is what the engines are looking for.
Here's my best piece of advice, okay? If you could build a website, let's say all consumers on earth are on the internet and you can talk directly to them. There is no search engine. There's just this magical connection between whatever you put up and the consumers coming directly to you. And it's an automatic thing, except there's one filter. You have to be the best of breed. If you are the best of breed, you will capture everything for your industry. Now, it's a utopian view, but I think every business would like that. Most businesses would tell me right up front, I am best of breed. And then I would go to their website and point out 5 things that are wrong within about 2 minutes. And so that's the challenge. You have to look beyond yourself. You have to understand what best of breed looks like. Real simple indicator of what best of breed is, who's ranking number 1 in Google right now. And then you do a delta analysis. What's the gap between them and you? And if you are at a dead end, if you can't tell what the gap is, that's not because there's no gap. It's not because Google is failing. It's because you're not using the right tools and you don't have the right knowledge to actually dig into what's happening, which is why you walk down the hall and you talk to your SEO, who normally you like to ignore because they speak some weird foreign language. That
like
you don't
knowledge
really
graphs and reputation management and core web vitals.
Exactly. And then they'll tell you all the areas that we need to improve in as a company.
Right.
And then it's about prioritizing resources.
Right.
Can we get the work done? You know, how do we justify this against an ROI? What does an ROI look like? And just to be clear, asking an SEO to justify an ROI is squishy at best. Okay. Like most of them are going to look at you and say, well, it doesn't quite work that way. It's not like 1 for 1 where you spend $1 and you make 2 and then you're up $1. Like it's not like that in the world of SEO. It's invest $10 here and $30 over here and maybe 100 up here. And then, wow, look at that. We got 1,000 over here. Wow, you sound really surprised by that. Well, I am. Like, that's the world of SEO.
But I'm here to tell folks with the help of companies like Yext and others in the space right now, this isn't something where you need to reinvent the wheel. You have the information within your business. It's making that information presentable in an easy format for Google so they can find you in the right appropriate and help direct people the right way.
Not just for Google, right? Again, let's take the engine out of this. You build your website for the humans. You build the website for your customer because you can build a technical website for Google to come in and crawl and it will be fantastic. But from a human perspective, there's a whole lot of clicking that has to happen in the navigation.
Very good point.
If that's not the best experience for a consumer,
no.
You build the best experience for the consumer.
Correct.
Google sometimes has to deal with that, and that's okay. You know, this isn't a situation where you're kowtowing to the search engine. This is a situation where, if anything, you're simply trying to serve the human the best.
Right.
Whatever that looks like, which is its own difficulty because, you know, what really wows Mike Miller might not wow Duane Forrester and vice versa. So what's the average look like between those two humans? And then across 100,000 of your customers, what does that average look like? It's not easy.
Right.
But there are known commodities here. Companies like mine, we exist to help with a portion of that. You can hire an agency to help with that. A consultant can guide you on it.
There's plenty of services that do reputation management and show you what all of your rankings are and how to interact and route those into a call center if you wanted to, et cetera.
Yeah.
But the good news is you don't have to have a team of folks that are building you a dynamic website every day as things change and messages change. There's lots of ways to play this game. And thanks to companies like Yext, we have the ability to get there. So Duane, you've given us a lot of information today. I don't want people to be to leave this conversation thinking that knowledge graphs, reputation management, core web vitals are very complicated and complex. I don't know what to do there. Just know that you're doing it today. It could be better, with no doubt, with a little look and some information on how it all works. And as consumers, you gave us a breath of fresh air. You're telling me that the search engine and the search world in particular is trying to build a better experience versus one that they can cram a paid advertisement down my throat.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's not happening, but this is a coin, right? There's two sides to the coin. It's the search coin. Let's be honest. And look, for those people who are sitting on the ledge right now, let me talk you down by saying this, okay? If you ever want to know how you are doing, and you're thinking, oh, we suck, we're terrible, we got to do this, we got to do that, we know resources, like all of this stuff that just batters us every day in the business world, just go take a look at your competitors, right? I'm going to tell you guys this right now. Go look up the Core Web Vitals test tool. You'll find one. It's on the developer's website for Google, right? Mike, I'm hoping you can share this at some point. Get the link, and we'll share it in the link. You bet.
I'll put it in the show notes.
And the reason that I want you guys to do this is this test will give you a score of your own website. Just put your URL in, doesn't matter. It will score that web page for you and tell you out of 100 how you're doing. And you may score a 20 and a red, and it may tell you that you're failing the test. And you may think, wow, Duane, that really hurts. Why would you do this to me? Because then you're going to go put your top 3 competitors into the same tool, and you're going to find that you're right mid-pack with them all. And then you're going to realize, hey, this isn't a gun to my head. This is something that I can build into. This is my future. And now that I know, I can build better. I can make prioritization decisions that help my business move forward with clarity. And there is a reward for that. That's why you're going to go do that test on the actual website.
Awesome. I will leave that I'll leave the Core Web Vitals test tool in the show notes. I'm also going to put your LinkedIn profile in there so people can reach out if they want to, as well as your Amazon, because you've got a couple books out there. I want to make sure that people know how to turn clicks into customers.
Those are getting old now. So be careful who's out there. I'm happy if folks want to buy them. If folks have questions, just reach out to me. Track me down on Twitter, track me down on LinkedIn. I'm happy to engage with folks and answer questions.
That sounds good. Duane, I appreciate the time here. I'm hoping everybody here gets something out of this and understands, and look forward to future conversations. Appreciate you taking the time with us.
Thank you, Mike, for having me on the show.
Hey, Mike here. Hope you liked this boardroom session. Please check back to your future sessions as we're recording a new one every month. If you want to reach out, look for me on LinkedIn or send me a note at mike@sidepath.com. That's Mike at sidepath.com.